Rape, murder, assault, all traumatic experiences my guests today have survived. And I'm proud to have a show that helps families get justice for crimes committed against them or their loved ones. Today, I'm bringing you a special episode dedicated to true crime stories. My first guest, Kimberly, is a survivor of a brutal rape. At age 20, she was awakened by the feeling that she couldn't breathe. And when she looked up, she saw the shadow of a man on top of her. Take a look.
At 20 years old, when I went to sleep on the night of May 11th, 2006, I never could have imagined that the minute I'd wake up would be someone suffocating me in my own college bedroom. My life changed forever on the morning of May 12th, 2006, when a stranger broke into my college apartment, held me captive for 2 hours in my room, and raped me. My face was covered with a shirt, and I had no way of escaping. And that whole time I had to lay there at 20 years old thinking that that was how I was going to die. When he finished his assault, I had to take a different tact if I wanted to survive. And so I started talking to him. I was logging away every possible detail that I could think of. As he finished his assault, he ejaculated on my upper left thigh, and it was this awful burning sensation. But I knew at that moment that was DNA evidence. And so I did my best to not smudge it, to not roll it onto the sheets. And when he turned me to face the window to look outside, I was intent on preserving that evidence. As he was getting ready to leave, he asked if he could get a drink of water. And knowing that I had just meticulously cleaned the apartment the night beforehand, I instructed him to go to the wrong cabinet. I was hoping that maybe he'd leave fingerprints or something that the officers could find afterwards. He left my room that morning and exited through the front door. I immediately grabbed my phone, where it had been sitting on my bookcase headboard the entire time, and dialed 911.
911, what is the address of your emergency?
I was raped.
You were what?
I was raped.
Okay, did the person that did this to you, are they still there?
Just left my...
After I called 911, I put on really baggy sweatpants because I knew that that DNA evidence was still on my leg. I peed into a cup in case they needed anything. I made sure to stand on a towel and preserve as much evidence as I could, because at that point, all I could think was that this was how I was going to get my revenge. A few times I told him I'm claustrophobic, and I got him to move his shirt just enough so that I could see from about the mid-bridge of his nose up and about mid-calf down during the assault. And for those 2 seconds where I was staring into his eyes as he raped me, I don't think that I'd ever seen evil like that before. But this was looking into the eyes of a predator who I knew would not stop with just me. It suddenly became my focus, not just to protect myself and my roommates, but as many people as I could. I did see my day in court, and I know that that isn't normal. I'm statistically a rarity, and I was able to get up on the stand for 3 hours, sitting 10 feet away from the man who raped me, and tell a judge and a jury exactly what he did. He was sentenced to 24 years to life in the Department of Corrections after he was found guilty of sexual assault and burglary. He wrote me a letter just before sentencing that admitted what he had done, asked for my forgiveness, and said how sorry he was, but he was actually a really good person, and that he had this family and hopes and dreams, and all of these excuses for why he thought he could take away my life. And I still have that letter, partially because I think people need to know how rapists like these think, but also it's a wonderful reminder to me that he picked the wrong woman.
Kimberly's attacker was convicted of sexual assault and sentenced to 24 years in prison. Today, more than 14 years after that brutal attack, I'm pleased to welcome Kimberly to the show. Kimberly, thank you for sharing your story with us. How hard is it for you to relive that, to recount that story?
You know, I've realized that the more I talk about it and the more I face it head on, the more control I've been able to gain over the years. I've done a ton of therapy and speeches, and all of those things together help me write the end of this story. And it's not as difficult to talk about as it was before because of all of that work. And also I think part of it is just that it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, like, oh my gosh, this really did happen to me.
Yeah. I was a Chicago police officer, and I investigated a lot of brutal assaults and rapes. I don't know if I've ever met a victim that was so composed. I mean, I know it had to be terrifying and you were suffering, but to stay in the moment and to make decisions to gather evidence, to preserve evidence, I don't know if I've ever met a victim quite like you.
I have to say, I always thought that I'd be that kind of person that, oh, well, I can fight them off. I can scream, I can run, I can do all of these things. And you never know how you're going to react until you're in that moment. And the only thing that's important to do in those times is just survive.
When you're going through the trial and, you read some of the experiences that they put rape victims through, right? They try to really make the victim seem, they bring up her sexual behavior and all this other stuff. How was that the trial for you going through that?
For me, that trial was cathartic only because that's what I was thinking about while I was laying there being assaulted. I know that I am statistically very rare. I also am coming from a place where, I had DNA evidence and I have all of these things and it's a black and white crime and we can tell exactly where he entered the apartment, and I called right away. And still, even with all of that, it's not some slam dunk in court. There are millions of reasons that people like me or not like me don't choose to report. I don't feel like I was really prepared for the cross-examination, and really nobody was, because I'm still having my credibility attacked. I am still being told, well, now, that's not what actually probably happened. Do you think maybe you're mistaken? It's not an easy process. But you feel that fear and that intensity rise in your chest. That's what survivors walk around with all the time. And to get on the stand and sit 10 feet away from the monster who raped me, a judge and a jury and anybody else that was there in court, and talk about those things in detail when it was non-consensual. It was a rape. That fear and intensity is ever present.
He was sentenced to 24 years to life. Are you satisfied with that sentence?
I was until last year. I know now that the truth in sentencing is that there is none. He was sentenced to 12 years for burglary and 12 to life for the sex assault, so 24 years to life. And he is currently serving in the Department of Corrections here in Colorado. We actually had to start the parole process last year. I was there and spoke, and it was striking to see how much had not changed. But we will have to go back and do that every 2 years, and then every year, and then it may be every 6 months, 3 months, until he's finally released.
But you eventually have to relive your crime over and over, and not in a good way where you're helping other people. You have to go to this guy's parole hearings and fight to keep him in prison.
Yeah, exactly. Survivors of these crimes aren't just given a sentence to, hey, here's a few years where you feel safe. We're sentenced to life. We have to live the rest of our lives knowing that someone felt that they were more important than we were.
I'm not the victim here. I'm listening to the story, but that, to me, is just so great that that you have the courage, that you have the fight in you to keep this guy behind bars. I can't say, wow, I'm proud of you. I really am.